Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Re-Federalist Radio, where we take a look at current events through an original intent of the Constitution lens. I am Brady, also known in some strange corners of the internet as Warhamster. Joining me today, back from a 1 week hiatus to celebrate his anniversary, is my good friend, constitutional mentor, Mr. Constitution himself, Douglas V. Gibbs.
Good to be here. And yeah, 41 years of marriage. It's been a while.
Takes a little bit of work.
A little bit.
Now, the great thing about your story is it seems like it's getting easier
Oh, yeah.
throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
Which is nice.
We're more in love now than we ever have been. It's good stuff.
I'm looking forward to that. When I just had my 6 month anniversary about 3 or 4 days ago, so not quite at 41 years yet.
Time flies.
Before we jump in, let's just want to thank everyone listening on America Matters Radio, 93.7 KPGF, AM 1060, and all of you listening on the affiliate networks and stations, especially ZakiRadio.com. A little bit of disturbing news today. Before we jump into our normal format, we had a shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. As a church and a school. What we know, I listened to the press conference, is that the shooter mostly was shooting from the outside in. And although there were reports of over 20 injuries, it looks like only 3 dead, including the shooter himself. So I think, to parse the phrase, we dodged a few bullets there.
And of course, the media will say it was a mass shooting and once again call for gun control.
They already have. Yeah, that's pretty much half of left-wing Twitter is for gun control, but that's why I wanted to bring this up. He put out a 11-minute disturbing video on YouTube about 2 hours before the shooting. I have watched it. I'm not going to play that on the radio. It is not suitable at all. This guy first of all, he appears to be transsexual. We see videos of him as far as 4 years back, and they're pretty nonsensical. It's pretty easy to watch them and question his mental health.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a full manifesto, looking to be about 3 or 4 pages of handwritten notes. And there's really mixed emotions in the messaging this guy's putting out. The video itself, the one he released today, I'm just going to sum it up. We were really looking at the guy's showing his bedroom, and he's really odd mannerisms, and he's got a real big arsenal of magazines, clips, rifles, handguns, you name it. He had a smoke, one of those smoke, whatever. The guy who's been preparing this for quite some time. Where it gets disturbing is in all these black magazines and on his rifle barrels, etc. He's got writings, a lot of profanity. He absolutely has killed Donald Trump on one. He got very excited about that. And there's quite a bit of anti-Semitic writings as well, including something of saying 6 million was not enough, referring, of course, to the Holocaust. So this is a disturbed guy. They're going to, you're not going to get away with, calling this a MAGA shooter by any stretch, which is, of course, what they try to do every single time.
Right. Well, and I've told people you want to stop mass shootings. If you look at the history of who's behind them, just don't give Democrats guns. So.
This guy...
it was that simple, but anyway.
Yeah, his name was Robin Westman.
Okay.
And we're starting to look for motive. There's a Twitter user who did some really good homework and found that the Church of the Annunciation, which is where the shooting took place, put something out in August 2021, said, on Sunday, we honored Mary Grace Westman, that's his mother, who is retiring from Annunciation. So that's probably where you get your motive from of why he decided to, take out other lives at that particular location. Since this is a show about the Constitution, I thought we'd just sort of segue into the gun control conversation that is going to come up inevitably on the nightly news. Of course, the other thing we see all the time, Doug, is when we do get one of these mass shooting events, and any one thing more than one person is a mass shooting. But when you get those, it seems to, when it turns out it is somebody from the transsexual community or a person of color, the left-wing news only covers it for about 12 hours, and then it goes away. And when it turns out it's somebody from the right wing, dominates the news for the next week. And I think we'll probably see that again. That's just a prediction. So they're going to be calling for gun control, Doug. What say you?
My first response is, while Donald Trump is in office, what they're saying, if they want gun control, is they want to reduce how many guns the American public has, but allow the Trump administration government to have as many as they need. Are you really wanting that, folks, that are on the left? Do you really want that? Now, the motive, I'm glad you brought that up, because while this person was very political, he had his political opinions, and he was an obvious sufferer of Trump derangement syndrome. The motive doesn't look like it was political, although everybody would try to make it political. It looks like he had a personal gripe. Whether or not it was a legitimate gripe, I don't know. Whether or not he has mental illness, I don't know. People who inhabit the wokeism edge of the sphere, it kind of reminds me of Savage, who would say, Randy Savage, who was it Randy? Yeah, Michael Savage. There we go. I'm getting my wrestler mixed up with my commentator. Michael Savage, who said that that liberalism is a mental disease. He might have been he might have been onto something, but we have to be careful, because I noticed in the reporting, mental disorder, mental disease. This is something also that the left will throw out there a lot. We need to be careful with that, because if you're going to not allow folks to have a firearm or be a legal gun owner because of a mental disorder, because of a mental history, and I get the argument, and someone who's bat stuff crazy, I don't probably want them to have a gun. Well, on the same token, when you start using that type of language, remember who the definers are, who's defining what mental illness is. And is that something that we really want? And I don't know if I want to use the mental illness argument with this guy. Mental illness in the sense that he's wackadoodle in some of his belief systems and hating Trump, but a long, meticulous preparation. Usually folks that have mental issues, and in most cases, of course, there's always exceptions, aren't ones to methodically plan and then carry out to the T, unless, of course, they have some type of just other disorder. We've got to go to break. I got to end that right there.
1 in 3 adults in America have prediabetes, but most don't know it. To let people know it can be reversed before it becomes type 2 diabetes, professional basketball player Julius Randle is doing everything in reverse.
I'm only dunking with reverse windmills. I drove the whole way to practice in reverse. I don't recommend it. This move's called the reverse shuffle. I do recommend it. And it took me months to learn how to speak in reverse, like this. Here's 10 almost for diabetes type 2 with living Ben has mama. In other words, my mom has been living with type 2 diabetes for almost 10 years. So together, we want to say to the 84 million Americans at risk, exercise and healthy eating can help reverse prediabetes. Start by taking a simple 1-minute risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Bet he can't say that in reverse.
In Northern Nevada, there's a one-of-a-kind home that provides temporary overnight lodging when veterans or family members are receiving medical care in the Reno area, some from hundreds of miles away. Too often, overnight accommodations are a financial and logistical challenge. Stephanie Tanksley and her husband are veterans who come for treatment from Bishop, California.
We were lucky enough to be connected to the guest house so that I could stay for 10 nights when my husband was in the hospital. So I was able to visit him every day. It was just a blessing.
Veterans Guest House is privately supported by individual and community donations from people like you who recognize our responsibility to support our heroes. And no government money is received for day-to-day operation of the house.
Please support this organization. The Veterans Guest House is an amazing resource for veterans. Supporting this organization is one of the best ways that you can donate your time and your money just to help our veterans and their families.
Find out how you can help at veteransguesthouse.org.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the...
Hey, everybody. We are back from the break. And Doug was making a very valid point before we broke off about who do you really want.
I didn't get to the Constitution part, but I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I had a very similar conversation about just this week. They were talking about the death penalty. And people are saying, well, we need an expanded death penalty, to be a bigger deterrent against violent crime. Well, yeah, I agree with the death penalty as a deterrent. I've got no problem with it, but the issue is, the government has got a dubious record of convicting innocent people, and so unless you've got 100% concrete proof, I'm talking about perfect video evidence that's never been manipulated, eyewitnesses that are impeccable, a confession. All those things. If you don't have all of that, then there's still that element of a doubt that you do not get to take a human life. I do not trust the government to have that power. I don't want to do this whole show on the Second Amendment, Doug. Interestingly enough, Sunday night, Doug was on the show with our good friend Alan Myers for the Republic on Patriot Soapbox. And I had, my wife had fallen asleep early, so I came upstairs to listen to it. And they were talking about the Second Amendment issues, and my ears were burning. So Doug summoned me. And I brought in a couple of, I threw an interesting curveball at them, and Alan really took it and ran with it. He's going to use some of that material in his upcoming speech. But I brought in the Virginia State Constitution and the Massachusetts State Constitution that has very interesting language because they predate the U.S. Constitution, and a very interesting language, and it really proves the point that Doug's about to hammer home. But do it quickly because I got some other topics I want to hit.
Well, let's break it down a little bit. First of all, one of the things I love living about where I live in Oregon. Everybody goes, well, Doug, wait a second. Portland. Yeah, but you know what? The state constitution is awesome when it comes to language regarding guns. And guns is your right to keep and bear arms, right, natural right. This is really a key part of this issue. When it came to this government being created by the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the federal government, they wanted to limit its authorities. And when it came to our rights, they wanted it to stay out of our rights. And so in the first 7 drafts, there was no authority granted to the federal government regarding our natural rights. But there were calls for a Bill of Rights. Not giving them the authority is not enough. We have to tell them, do not infringe. You cannot infringe. So worried that this new government would abuse its powers, usurp the Constitution, they added a Bill of Rights. And in that Bill of Rights is the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed. I don't need to go through it. I think most of you know what it means. Basically, your rights, however, is a local issue. There are some laws that do need to be made on rights. So really it comes down to, first of all, if we're going to start discussing gun control, gun rights, whether or not we can be armed, we first of all need to talk to the state. What is the state's laws on that? Second of all, and I don't know if this was a gun-free zone. That might be something to look at. Typically, gun-free zones are where the shootings happen. You know why? Shooters don't want to be shot at. Just saying. And so I'm a big proponent of the idea that good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns. And when it gets into the courts and all of that, like I said earlier, I want us to be very careful with this mental health, but it's going to be up to the state, not up to the federal government. Federal government, every single federal gun law is unconstitutional. I'm sure there's more you were thinking I'd say, but I think I tapped on pretty much what you were looking for.
Well, I think both of us could probably go on about a 2-hour rant on this topic.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
That is not the top. We've done it before, so.
Yeah. Trust me, folks, I was restraining myself.
I didn't even have to get the fishing rod out to reel you in today. Thank you, Doug. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of Trump's recent executive orders to get back on the constitutional track, which this show's all about. So if you could pull my screen up there, Mr. Producer, and I will take a look at something. Are we up there yet? Well, I'm sure I'll get it. So big news over the last few weeks was when Trump decided to federalize Washington, D.C. And then he threatens to do the same to the other crime-ridden Democrat blue cities. And this questions of whether he can and can't do that. The executive order I want to look at, and we're going to get to that, but the EO that I want to look at is there's two of them. The measure to end cashless bail and enforce the law in the District of Columbia, and taking steps to end cashless bail to protect Americans. Now, the language in here is really important because he does an executive order that says no more cashless bail in District of Columbia. Does he have that authority, Doug?
Well, technically there needs to be a law passed, but yes, the federal government has that authority.
In D.C., but not the other cities.
Right.
So, as stated in Executive Order 14333 in August 25, declaring an emergency in the District of Columbia, there is a crime emergency in Washington, D.C., et cetera, et cetera. One of the causes of crime, a lot of people would tell you, and I would agree, is to get this cashless bail that puts criminals back on the street 5 minutes after they're arrested so they're free to commit more crimes. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Why do we have bail, Doug?
Well, bail, first of all, it allows you to hold the person, and then if they are released and they violate that bail, it gives authority to bring them back in. What it does is essentially in the long run, what it does is it keeps the criminal from skipping out on their court date. Ultimately, that's what it does.
And that's why you see wealthier people get much higher bail levels, because they have the means to skip the country or the state, what have you. And people that don't have the same monetary means, you can keep the bail a little bit lower. They don't have the ability to skip town as easily. And that's the whole purpose of it, to make sure they show up for their trial.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd have to keep them in jail the entire time.
Right.
Like they did to certain people that were at a certain event on the 6th day of January in a recent year. And you can also hold people without bail. But going back to D.C. and this executive order, this is all about. The District of Columbia's pretrial release policies, which include prohibiting cash bail, contribute to the disgraceful conditions referenced in the aforementioned executive order. So Section 2 goes down here. To prevent the release of dangerous suspects based on cashless bail policies, relevant federal law enforcement agencies and officials who are members of the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, et cetera, shall work to ensure that arrestees in the District of Columbia are held in federal custody to the fullest extent permissible under law, and shall pursue federal charges and pre-trial detention for such arrests whenever possible, consistent with the applicable law, to ensure that criminal defendants who pose a threat to public safety are not released from custody prior to trial. All right, everything there seems pretty legitimate.
And notice here, you've got two things that are going on here. A, we want to make sure this person doesn't flee. And two, they could be a danger to their community. Yes, you're innocent until proven guilty. Yes, if you've been charged, that does not mean you've gone to trial yet. But at the same time, if there is enough evidence that because remember what is behind warrants? Probable cause. If there's enough probable cause that there was a warrant, there's enough probable cause that there's a charge. This needs to be resolved. And it depends on the level of the case or whatever. Obviously, there are abuses, and you have to be careful with the abuses, but we do recognize that at the same time, you can't throw the baby out with bathwater, and because you're so worried about abuse that you just get rid of all of it. And now there is really no penalty for the criminals who are going to skip town. They don't care. They'll go into hiding, whatever, and there's no penalty. And when there's no penalty, when people perceive life as having no penalty, what happens? Crime goes up.
Indeed. And how many murders have we had in D.C. since Trump federalized it?
It's a big goose egg.
Yeah, that would be 0. And most of those are black
lives. Deterrence works.
And most of those lives being saved are black people. So Black Lives Matter, where are you on this one?
Right.
Second part of this, and this is important, he keeps saying consistent with applicable law. But then he says, shall request that the mayor of D.C. make such updates and modifications. and policy as the Attorney General determines would be necessary. So he's saying he wants to work with a local authority. The mayor still has an office since we passed the Homeland Rule Act, or the Home Rule Act, excuse me. Real quick.
Technically, he doesn't have to, in my opinion. This is a federal property. And if they want to play games, if they want to play the sovereignty game and home rule and all this sort of stuff, I just urge Congress to pass a law that repeals the 1871 Act that created the city in the first place. It's that easy.
And while we're doing that, since it's impossible to get a fair jury in D.C., why don't we get rid of the district of the D.C. District Court and move that into Maryland altogether so we can actually get a fair jury instead of one from a 95% Democrat voting population? Yeah.
But drop it to a 55 to 60%, but that's still better than 90.
Yes. You might actually be able to get a grand jury where you couldn't indict a ham sandwich. We're going to get into that a little bit more on the other side of the break, but I think we're at that magic time.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Sliced fresh sandwiches every day, made right before your eyes. The port of Subway could be a smoking number 5 or a classic number 8, or maybe an Italian is your number 1 fave. Whatever you crave, prepare to fall in love. Sliced fresh sandwiches, port of Subs.
The grilled chicken melt at Port of Subs will warm up your winter with savory grilled chicken and your favorite melty cheese on fresh-baked pepperoncini pepperjack bread, topped with all your favorite veggie toppings and sauces. Bundle up with savory Cool Ranch Doritos, a refreshing Sprite, and a classic chocolate chip cookie for a hearty meal that'll leave you feeling oh so satisfied. Available for a limited time at your neighborhood Port of Subs, or order at portofsubs.com or on our mobile app. Port of Subs, we're slicing up the quality you crave.
Whatever yummy number you're dreaming of, sliced fresh sandwiches, Port of Subs.
Okay, we are running a car drive right now to help veterans all across America. So if you have an old car, truck, or van, even a motorcycle or an RV sitting around, you can right now give it away and help the vets. They really need your help. And your car will help support the vets and their families. And guess what? You even get a tax donation. Plus, we'll even come and pick up your car for free. And all you've got to do is pick up your phone right now and make a free call. Now is the perfect time to do something good for the vets. Give back to the vets right now for all they've done for this country. And your old car can really help them. So call the Veterans Car Donation Program right now for free pickup of your vehicle. Help the vets and help your taxes at the same time. Call right now.
800-296-1259. 800-296-1259. 800-296-1259. That's 800-296-1259.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now back to the show.
Hey, we are back from break. And when we left you, we were talking about the cashless bail executive order in the District of Columbia. And Doug agrees that this is completely within the president's power to issue an executive order because the District of Columbia, the city, is federal. Which brings us to the question. When he talks about cleaning up other cities, can he do it? Can he send in the National Guard to Chicago, even though the governor doesn't want it? Can he do it in Los Angeles, which he's done previously? You want to give a quick answer to that, Doug, and we'll move into that next executive order?
Article 4, Section 4 says that if it's for the purpose of domestic violence, then it has to be on the application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened. Texas would be an example of that since they have a part-time legislature against domestic violence. In other words, and see, the federal government can move into states for certain things. For example, if they're trying to execute a law, Article 1, Section 8, then they can use the militia, National Guard to help execute those federal laws, like the assistance with ICE, totally constitutional. But if it's going to be for the purpose of domestic violence, and I would say quelling the crime-ridden state of a city would fall under that, it requires the legislature of the state to give approval before the federal government can bring in agents, officers, personnel to take care of that. The federal government can bring them in for their federal buildings, their federal properties, but specifically for domestic violence, they need permission. Now, understand, that doesn't say the city's permission, it's the legislature's permission. So if the city is hard left, crazy, no way we're going to let Trump be here, and the legislature says he's coming in to help, it's happening. But the legislature has to okay it.
Which brings up an interesting conundrum. One of the things you hear on the media quite often is, if you look at all the crime in these, red states, well, they're blue cities in red states. There's also blue cities in blue states with really high crime, and I'll pull up that list here in a second. But what Doug just explained is, look at one of the biggest, highest crime rate cities in America is Memphis, Tennessee. Well, Memphis is a very blue city, and Tennessee is a very red state. This is an example where you're probably likely to see the National Guard deployed and actually clean up the crime. This can be done.
Jackson, Mississippi would be another one. Jackson's like number 4 on the murder rate per capita.
Yeah, and then there's Illinois. And you're just not going to get any cooperation with a Republican president from any of that state or that city.
Yeah, basically Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco are screwed.
New York City?
New York City, yeah. Well, we'll see how Curtis Sliwa does and how the election comes up. I'm fascinated with what's going on in New York.
Yeah, I think Massachusetts is another one that would make that list. Although Boston,
oh yeah,
Boston's got some crime problems. If you go into the wrong neighborhoods, that's for darn sure. I mean, I've almost gotten off the freeway in the wrong place, and it's not pretty. I was trying to pull up the list of the top 10 crime cities, but there is going to be that dichotomy playing out. So if a producer can pull up my screen share again, I am going to go into the next executive order called Taking Steps to End Cashless Bail to Protect Americans. Now, the media is up in arms that Trump said that he's going to end cashless bail, in all these cities himself. He can't do that. But he didn't try to do that either. He says, the purpose and policy maintaining order and public safety requires incarcerating individuals whose pending criminal charges or criminal history demonstrate a clear ongoing risk to society. All right, that makes perfect sense. He talks about why we need to get rid of cashless bail. He says, within 30 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General shall submit to the President, through the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security, a list of states and local jurisdictions that have, in the Attorney General's opinion, substantially eliminated cash bail as a potential condition of pretrial release from custody for crimes that pose a clear threat to public safety and order, including offenses involving violent, sexual, indecent acts or burglary, looting, or vandalism. The Attorney General shall update this list as necessary. So is this an executive order overstepping presidential bounds?
No, they can have a list. They can advise all they want.
Yeah. Yeah, he's basically ordering someone in the executive department to perform an act, which is the exact purpose of an executive order. Nothing unconstitutional yet, right? The head of each executive department and agency, in coordination with the director of the Office of Management and Budget, shall identify federal funds, including grants and contracts currently provided to cashless bail jurisdictions, identified pursuant to subsection A of this section, that may be suspended or terminated as appropriate and consistent with applicable law. What he's saying is that if these blue states or blue cities are going to continue with cashless bail and endanger their citizens, he's going to stop giving them money.
Why are we going to put money into something that's a losing cause? Why are the taxpayers going to pay for that? And what's fascinating about this is he's using the left's own tool against them. What's hilarious is, well, it's not hilarious, it's serious, but it's hilarious in a sense, is that the courts will then tell him he can't do that. But they could before. I mean, when all the states didn't go to 55 miles an hour, they had no problem with it. If a state wasn't willing to declare Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, they did it. What's the difference? And someone says, yeah, but is it constitutional for him to suddenly yank money from that poor state? It was unconstitutional for them to be giving them the money in the first place. So you're asking me if it's unconstitutional to undo something that was unconstitutional in the first place?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Well, we talk about state nullification all the time,
Yeah.
and one of the prices of state nullification are you can get your federal funds withheld. That wasn't the case prior to certain acts in like 1913. Nullification worked because the government got most of its income from the states, and so the federal government passed unconstitutional laws, the state would say, we don't think so, we're not paying you. So things have changed, and that's why the 17th Amendment, 16th Amendment, and the income tax all have got to be reversed. Different show.
Federal Reserve Act, throw that in there while you're at it.
Yeah, well, you can never say that often enough.
Yeah, well, but because the Federal Reserve officers, not that I'm trying to change subject, you get fired. You don't have to leave, apparently.
Yeah.
Even if you have mortgage fraud against you, you don't have to leave.
What does a blue state mayor do in the face of that kind of a threat? What kind of options do they have?
Not many.
No, not really. I don't see a legal or constitutional avenue. I mean, Pritzker and Newsom.
Resist. That's all you're going to hear.
The best thing about this is the optics, because this is not even an 80-20 issue. This is a 90-10. You ask Americans from anywhere in this country whether they want more crime or less crime, you're probably going to see most people, over 90%, are going to say less crime is probably a good thing. The Democrats have been put in the position of arguing for more crime because their Trump derangement syndrome won't allow them to work with him, reach across the aisle in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it reminds me of, and I know I've mentioned this before, but it was so perfect when Trump said, I could find the cure to cancer. They'd accused me of putting oncologists out of work.
It's true, though. I mean, and that's really been the beauty of Trump 2.0 is he's got the Democrat Party taking the wrong side of every 80-20 issue, whether it be the border, crime, forced transitioning of children and minors. Most Americans actually agree with his steps on these things.
And they're not just defying what he says or defying what is reality or truth. They are screaming the 20% position loudly, proudly. In other words, they're not just shooting themselves in the foot. They are pulling out a machine gun to do it so everybody notices. But
Trump is a dictator and an authoritarian who's trying to save lives, particularly in cities which are mostly minority. And those are the people the Trump is a racist has gone now. I mean, they've got to argue differently that Trump saving the lives of people of color that live in cities is a bad thing. That's a tough political position to have to take.
Especially when people suddenly are paying attention more than they ever have before. See, before the left could say something and people go, oh, okay. Now they say something and the people go, that's a bunch of bull.
So the last constitutional question about this withholding the federal funds is, well, if Congress has already written legislation to spend that money, how does the president have the right to withhold it? And we've seen that come up a few times over the last 6 months.
Presidential power of impoundment.
Yeah. Explain impoundment a little bit.
Presidential power of impoundment is basically, while the money is apportioned by Congress, the president operates in the real world. He's the one that knows how it's going to be and if it's going to be and how much it's going to be spent. And the example I like to use is if you gave your child $10 to go buy some eggs and he finds them for $6.99. So he comes back with the 301 change. You say, no, I gave you $10, take those eggs back, spend an entire $10 on a carton of eggs where they're that price. Well, that's ridiculous. The president has the discernment, because he's in the real world situation, to choose how the money's going to be put in. As long as the apportionment is where, how much and how it's done is up to him. He's in that situation. And this is the precedent for this is by Thomas Jefferson. And I'm sure that most of you won't argue that Thomas Jefferson had no idea what was constitutional.
The brilliance of this executive order is he's not just saying I'm cutting off all funds for the city. What he's saying is he's asking all of the executive department heads to make recommendations of how we can use this leverage.
Yeah, it's almost like a voodoo doll. We're not going to stick you with all the pins, but I will hit you with this pin right there.
And city budgets are not overflowing, but a lot of them, run deficits. They cannot afford to operate with that. And most of these states don't have the ability to step in and fill the gap for their cities.
Right.
So this is a showdown really worth keeping an eye on. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But again, 0 murders since Trump federalized Washington, D.C.
And the argument has been, but those National Guard, they don't have police, skills. This is just something. They're not there for their police skills. They're there just for their presence.
Yeah, and there's also a video I just saw yesterday of them picking up trash in some of the parks. Apparently, the city.
There's nothing to do now. The city is safe, so we're going to pick up trash. People are starting to go to the restaurants. Tourists are showing up.
What happens in D.C. after that 30 days is up? Take us to the break with that one real quick.
Well, one of two things will happen. Either Congress has to pass a law to extend it, or it stops and then everything goes to you-know-what, and Trump will be then, I told you.
And a lot of the criminals are probably trying to wait him out. And with that, let's go to the break.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsyth Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form, cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Recovery from mental and substance use disorders is real. You can recover. It's possible. It happens every day.
Never give up on yourself.
Discover hope and help.
I thought I was too far gone. I wasn't.
Join the Voices for Recovery.
The world is a beautiful place again.
For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral for mental and substance use disorders for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back for the fourth and final segment of today's episode of Re-Federalist Radio. I am War Hamster Brady, joined by Mr. Constitution Douglas V. Gibbs. We are going through some of Donald Trump's recent executive orders, and I'm going to hit on a new subject now, if I can get my screen shared again. On August 25th, he writes an executive order called Prosecuting the Burning of the American Flag. So as you can guess, we're probably going to talk about the First Amendment here. Section 1, he says, our great American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America and of American freedom, identity, and strength. Over nearly 2.5 centuries, many thousands of American patriots have fought, bled, and died to keep the stars and stripes waving proudly. He goes on to extol the virtues of the flag. He says, burning this representation of America may incite violence and riot. So let me go back up here a little bit. He said, desecrating it is uniquely offensive and provocative. A lot of us agree with that. Wouldn't you, Doug?
No, absolutely.
It is a statement of contempt, hostility, and violence against our nation. The clearest possible expression of opposition of the political union that preserves our rights, liberty, and security. That's a really interesting sentence because he uses nation capitalized. We do not have a nation. We are a confederacy. And so it shouldn't be capitalized. But then he goes back there and talks about the political union that preserves our rights, liberty, and security. And that is a perfectly worded sentence. Would you not agree?
Yes.
He says, burning this representation of America may incite violence and riot. American flag burning is also used by groups of foreign nationals as a calculated act to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans because of their nationality and place of birth. Notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action or that is an action amounting to fighting words, in quotes, is constitutionally protected. See Texas v. Johnson. Would you agree with that paragraph, Doug?
Yes. And I'm watching the steps he's taking here. It's being very careful because he's recognizing that the First Amendment that applies here isn't just freedom of speech or freedom of assembly. It's freedom to peaceably assemble. He's trying to attach flag burning to unpeaceable or non-peaceable assembly.
His opponents are trying to say it is a violation of free speech. What was it they were saying during the Summer of Love 2020? Speech is violence? And violence? Yeah, no, it's not. You're talking about a direct act, and he says one that can incite violence versus saying what's on your mind, which can also be illegal if you're inciting violence. And that's been, the Supreme Court's ruled on that. The old expression is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, or you can yell fire in a crowded theater.
Well, you shouldn't, but the law against it can't be made by the federal government. It must be made by the local jurisdiction, state, county, or city, because the federal government, because of the First Amendment, has no authority to make any laws regarding your speech. So, the problem is we have this supremacy idea here, and if the Constitution says this, then that just means that the federal government must enforce it all over, and it applies everywhere, even in your personal situation with other people, and that's just not true. Second of all, I keep going back to the peaceably assemble part of the Constitution, part of the First Amendment. This is where it's the key. So, from a purely constitutional originalist point of view, I would say, and unfortunately, this gets into the realm of what someone's thinking, and so you have to specifically go into the actions surrounding it. If the person is burning the flag for the purpose of speech, and that's all that accompanies that act, then it must be protected. But if it is done in lieu of violent actions, domestic violence, it is a part of, then now it is a part of a violent act, and then it could be prosecuted.
Yeah, and the second, we're really talking about things like riots and the LA riots.
And you're already in trouble anyway if you're participating, whether you burned a flag or not.
Yeah, I mean, these are seditious acts, burning.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that symbol of our country. I am angered when I see someone trying to burn the flag. One of my most favorite videos in the world is when Rick Monday runs out there, man, in the outfield when someone's trying to burn a flag and grabs it. That's one of my favorite. So please don't misunderstand me here. But freedom means freedom for you and the people you may oppose and don't like. Now, that said, once again, when it comes to the burning of the flag, was it speech or was it something else? Was it inciting? Was it a part of a violent action? So, and I know it sounds like I'm splitting hairs and there's a fine line here, but that's the reality.
All right, let's see what this measure does. The CEO says, the Attorney General shall prioritize the enforcement to the fullest extent possible of our nation's criminal and civil laws against acts of American flag desecration that violate, here's the important part, applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression, consistent with the First Amendment. Very similar to what I just said.
Yeah, very good sentence. And let me say something real quick. I haven't read this before, so it wasn't like that. I got the idea from that. That's a very good sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was almost paraphrased. This may include, but is not limited to, violent crimes, hate crimes. Do not like that word, hate crime. Illegal discrimination against American citizens or other violations of American civil rights. And here's an important one, and crimes against property and the peace. That would be like burning buildings or cars, as well as conspiracies and attempts to violate and aiding and abetting others to violate such laws. Everything I see there is probably constitutional based on what we said previously, right?
Absolutely. And someone asked me on Sunday night, a show I was on, I'm sorry, not Sunday night, Tuesday. Yeah, yesterday when I was on a show with our good friend Ron Partain. What grade would you give President Trump? It's stuff like that has me giving him an A.
Yeah. Whoever writes his executive orders has probably taken your class a few times.
Yeah, he's got some constitutionalists around him. Now, every once in a while, they don't get it exactly right, or he'll say something that may not be exactly right. The great thing is usually then later on, you find out that either it was he said what he said because he's trying to negotiate and he wanted the shock value, or he spoke before he really had the research and then he adjusted as he went. But I think he's surrounded by good people.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he is a nationalist and he believes in the power of the executive branch more so than we do. He probably wields a little bit more authority than I think the founding fathers would have agreed to, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we've seen over the last few decades.
It's a heck of a lot less authority being wielded when you start comparing them to Obama, Johnson, Roosevelt, Wilson.
The whole darn list besides about 3 people.
Yeah.
All right. In cases where the Department of Justice or another executive department or agency determines that an instance of flag desecration may violate an applicable state or local law, such as burning restrictions, disorderly conduct, etc., the agency shall refer the matter to the appropriate state or local authority for potential action.
That real quick is fascinating. I had not thought about that before. California has very strict laws regarding burning. You have to get a permit to burn something outside,
unless it's an ice building.
And they're even now not even allowing people to have fireplaces in new homes.
When I get out of that,
and I don't remember seeing a asterisk in that law regarding burning flags. So that's a good point in that particular section.
Well, he's saying the agency shall refer the matter to the appropriate state or local authority. So he's recognizing that this is a state issue. It is not a federal issue. They can only refer the matter.
And the reference to the matter isn't just about the flag. Burning ordinances is listed in there, plus other things, which I think is brilliant.
To the maximum extent permitted by the Constitution, the Attorney General shall vigorously prosecute those who violate our laws in ways that involve desecrating the American flag and may pursue litigation to clarify the scope of the First Amendment exceptions in this area. That last sentence is pretty big, which means they're going to try to get the Supreme Court to take a look at what the First Amendment actually, what the exceptions are and what they aren't. Sounds to me like the Solicitor General is involved in this, and it is something that we may be seeing very soon. And when we do one of our Supreme Court previews and reviews, I'm sure that's going to be a fascinating conversation because, well, the First Amendment's important, real important, and there's been some misinterpretations of it in current days, without a doubt.
Sure.
So that's pretty much it for that, the executive orders today. I think we can conclude that President Trump has, these executive orders are constitutional. He is not overstepping his authority. He is trying to make the world a safer and better place, or the country at least. And the people that are fighting against him are doing the opposite. So
and
not only,
they're not doing it with the law or the Constitution in mind. They're doing it for one reason and one reason alone. They fear him.
yeah, without a doubt. The Trump derangement syndrome is on full display. Doug, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up in the near future?
DouglasVGibbs.com, DouglasVGibbs.com. I am on the radio, AM radio, also on Saturdays and during the day, 1 p.m. Pacific on KMET 1490 AM, 8 o'clock Saturday night on KPRZ and KCBQ in the San Diego market. And that show, Mr. Constitution Hours, on all of the podcast channels. And I write lately every day, sometimes a couple times. Go to DouglasVGibbs.com and go to the Political Pistachio blog. And on September 17th, Constitution Day, I will be at San Diego State University. So if you're in Southern California, come out and see me at San Diego State University, September 17th. And then on September 21st, I am speaking in Lake Havasu at the Constitution Week celebration. Come on out and see me on September 21st in Lake Havasu.
Very good. You can find me on my Rumble channel, which is just War Space Hamster, on Twitter/X at War_Hamster1776, and on True Social at War_Hamster. And I am going to be flying down to South Carolina to do a conference on the 14th Amendment with the Abbeville Institute. And that's going to be in late September, early October. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.